Okay, Ani, welcome. Welcome to Treaty Week 2022, hosted by Huron Waawiindamaagewin. I'm happy you can all join us. We have an exciting week full of many events that we hope you can participate in. But before we get started, we wanted to make sure we start in a good way with our Nokomis Martina here. So I'll pass it over to you, Nokomis.
Miigwech random son of what you much time can go. Ogani quandego, make no them, Macquandana the Bakmina Ingan. Equidishing mandani, Bede when the Shgavosa went Manda Menobe Madsoen. Midas Manda, Chekagis Makeo Menedosa, Janondaging, son and go, Kinamanda we much time, and the way we much time, Samandango, one mistake. Manda Waawiindamaagewin sa woman Shinigadik Saman Pinangwa. Get the swam the dosa, Gabosen Massa, Chanondavia, Manda sa Wakidia. Big wet wins a Canagego, man piget comic, Kashmi Gwain, man Pina King, or Jesus gave you boss our shed with Mishomis and Sagishak. You get going and give much Thomas Jeba. Mandak Chatoshko dessa in Abjakasia, Mandak Skibirabang, we migrate going. Midashno game in on Quenam on the way when the Manda Wishacham and the Sir Mampims and artists game and Mandasani. Vasha migrate and Master Jeba, Mabaget Bikisas, Miuge Wamu women Moshkaneshing, Maba Knokmesna. They get game migrate issue we do cause of one piget comic. Now the Matgi Quewan, Gay Shanab the end of Sim and the Nebe, can I swear where Shanab the end of Kirigagosa? Minama Bashkak Meque, Mapina King, Pishanashkamas, and the Melans, get game, Miguechuas, Nedo, Kinaman Pio, Rashaminat, and the Shkak Mequen. Manpi Bemadsoin, we are Ming Samamba, 1p. Mandasage, Maquen Massa, Chitwane Sewen. Canance baby, she gave me going. Minoman Pia care, gay me going, gay noisha, we made that dying man P get comic. Mandagesh Skode, Shebayan Maquenda, Mandasa when he much tongue, Mandasa Chigishep, Maquenda, ye wish for there. Mino ye manda nebe, gain Maquenda, gay Gasha, Miguel among Mandasheba, Mandasa can I. Can I get the gimna quang mandage and over some other nebe? You get one even a gay version Maquen Masso and the Nangosa. Mem the gay one even when Danmark Kashmi mean gas to Nishnabesa Mandasa Wabanong. You get game me which are you megas Kiabe Manda Mema Maji Dotsamanda did me on and was Semam Chigunang. Osema, he's got song, Sheba Pognak, he's got song. You get gay, Miguel so Megas a Yaba Beme, Bemen and Keith Mandasa, we might not want to get Melnanin or the Ishpeming. You get gay Maquel Mark Penochiak, Mem de Gago no Webby, Bidas Massajik, Mem de Gago and Madsajik, Mina Beme Occasajik again on Maquel Mark. Mishmina on the King's Jalon, or this. The Kings is Miguechuga and Sokana Kino, the Mishum Sanani Cookmestana Kino, Bemina then what he wish on them, sir. You get gain Miguechuax, Mabby Miguechuage or Washkesh, Kiaba may not do end and wish on them. With can you get what is Miguet or Washkesh? We sting, can I swear what the Shemina Gonamaba. Nanda get the way and up don't go with Misharsha towings, Miguechualia, Westy. Minogon the Geshkini like, get gain or no gonna be Kishna to be in the mort, Manda, Waawiindamaagewin, Manda Kino Mage, come going. No one Manda Chippy tender, Manda Kendas when Winnie Kenchagadex and Sokana gain or Kabe Shiken mort game under Bematsu in Beoja. Midashmanda. Waawiindamaagewin, Begish now when the Gish Knigai, Kane, what you can watch some on the Chipit and our walk on the way, we a Kenming Gosh ribs or gain or with the Ranso Karnak. You get the on the King Shanashkamasa, Epigishmok, Nengabinong, Ge Gaba Westi Sheminani with so Shkodevshike. Ge Eshmi wet Gabem Nishnaben, the me mommy not wanda. Ge Winnie medium, Minot not wewo, women object causing. Mandas women okay, Ge Miguetra some Shkodevshike. Mina wanda gan so kana kunni king say Hajake no Chinonda gang Sagmish from Salani cook mesnanik. Gain Archbishop Samanda, where when Amanda Wisha Young Samanda, Waawiindamaagewin, Samanda Kinomage, Gambong, Manda go on and mistakes. Not much long dash Genino, Manda Genino is Jinin and Kiang Manda so Wash Young so Kinomage. Mina Ganga and Masio Nim Kibaneshi. Yabeme Sazi Weptang Manda Aka. Ge is a 20,000 ge Manda Sunny, woman and Kitty, Minwes now in Nebe, Midash me wet again, the Nasa. Mish me now the gi wet long the kings, war Nido Makwa, Opske Makwa, Giaba Bebenani, which Menagdo and Angeshquandem. Gay me wet asa. Manda sa noch moin, mi manda kina manda Waawiindamaagewin, manda sa noch moin, manda sa gaino anso kanak, gaino rabisher shweb so atsa, noch moin dash manda isha wedge makewam, opshkimakwa, wamnedo makwa. Get gay, makwen makni, but I get sijik shwe, the king no go bemeshagabwijiksa. Get Minabeshikina Chana Minawanamiwa Osnawa Binabesh Netanishnabe, but Mino Mandani Nishnabe also in Gamuidot, Gain Makwen Massa. Midash Mandani, Eshabukosen Massa. Kino Wendak Ebiajik Nago Wendak Egimak 1 minute Kiotsa. When again, watch Kinomage so the Noncho Kinomage Gambongsa. Get gain or Juinamage Samanda Kinani Manda a picture a Jikchipit and Woxamandani Kinomage when we ne Kenming ani Egar Schwebak. We know Nangomego Schwebak, we know one Schwebaksa. When the Nijoswe Meshum Sanonic Nicking. Chinakanagewin, Gaish Nakadaming, Manda Sawawen Edger and Mad seeings, Mimanda Shabu Sedma. Harshen Mishnang, the Shem the Doshan Mishnang, Harshen Mishnang, Shem the Doshan Mishnang, Harshen Mishnang, Shem the Doshan Mishnang, Harshen Mishnang, Shem the Doshan Mishnang.
Oh, me wedge. So welcome, Anish, y'all Rekale Dijnakas, Punkrandin Donjaba, Weekwam Kong to Ben Douglas. Miigwechwinda, very happy to be here and happy to be sharing our week with you. So just before we get started with our Waawiindamaagewin update from our executive director, Earl Commanda, just wanted to quickly go over some of the events that we're going to be having for this week. So today we're here going live from our office in Meswakamak. So we'll be completely on Zoom today. We'll have our Waawiindamaagewin update, let you guys know all the work that we've been doing here at the treaty organization. And then at 11:30, we'll also hear from Diane Corbier, who is part of our legal team, who is working on our annuities court case. And she's going to share with us some of the treaty law principles that have been included in our court case. And also this morning, we're going to be launching our online treaty store. As you may know, we've launched it at Treaty Week, but we're going to head over to Mitch and Carrie at Green Medicine, who are hosting that for us. And they'll let you know some of the new things that they're working on over there. We're also going to be launching our new fall magazine. So be on the lookout for that. And we'll also be unveiling our new flag. So hopefully you'll be able to stay around with us for that as well. And then tomorrow, Tuesday, we have a great day filled of many panels. We have a legal panel, we have our TK elders sharing with us, as well as our youth in the afternoon. So that will be an in-person event. So we encourage you guys all to come and join us. We'll be at the Caruso Hall, Caruso Club here in Sudbury, which is at 385 Hague Street, and we'll be in the lower hall. So that's a full day of events. So we're hoping you guys could all come up. We encourage you guys all to share with us. And then Wednesday is our education day. So our GIMAs will be heading to some of the schools in our territory to host treaty talks with tomorrow's leaders. So last year, I believe we had over 100 classrooms join the event via Zoom as well as in person. So we're really looking forward to sharing with our students and having them have a chance to talk to our Okemuk. And then finally, on Thursday, we're taking this as our teaching day. So we'll be back with many of our cultural advisors and our knowledge keepers, and we'll be hosting some teachings at the City of Sudbury starting at 1 o'clock. So we'll be in council chambers. Again, that's a public event. So we encourage everyone to come, join us, share with us, learn with us. And then we've also have a very exciting partnership that we've worked on this week. So we've partnered up with Chicago Bay Health Center here in Miswakamuk. They're going to be showing their play, De Waawiindamaagewin, which they've launched at Truth and Reconciliation Day in September. So if anybody was around, they were able to see their amazing show they did at Bell Park. They're going to be doing the show again for us. They'll have 2 separate showings. One will be at 11 in the morning, hosted by us at Robinson Huron Treaty here. So feel free to come and join us. You can register on the Eventbrite just so that we know that we can expect how many numbers are there. It's a free event, so I encourage you guys all to come. It's amazing play. And they'll also be doing a second showing in the evening at 7 p.m. So I encourage you guys all to come out to that as well. The agenda is posted on our website. We did make a couple of changes, so feel free to go and download the PDF, as well as if you have any questions, reach out to us via the Zoom chat or on email, and we'll do our best to get that information to you. But I think that's good for us now, and we'll pass it over to Earl to do his Waawiindamaagewin update. So take it away, Earl. Oh yeah, we could have. You want to? Yeah. You can. Okay. One of your translations. Well, okay. Sorry, Martina.
There?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You do it right now, right? You do it right now.
Okay.
Yeah. That was me.
So we'll just cut that, like that at all?
Yeah, you can go live now, yeah.
Okay. Okay, so I'd just like to say in English what my prayer was about this morning. I truly give thanks to that sacred fire that we had this morning, led by Leroy, and how we came together, you know, to do this pipe ceremony. And what an awesome way to start this week, you know, with that by doing the pipes there. And so I give gratitude to, you know, to be there on the land, which is so important to Anishinaabe, to be on the land. And so I am grateful for this early morning, you know, driving out to Tikmikshing and being around that fire and doing all our prayers there. And this morning I was asked to come and do a prayer here, and I've said it in the language, and I want to translate what was in my prayer. It's always important to give gratitude. And so I think about everything that to be grateful for. And first of all, I say bonjour bonjour my relatives, and making sure that I announce my Anishinaabe Noswin, which is Rose Woman, and the beaver is my clan, and my helpers are the bear and the wolf. And so I started off with this prayer in asking the spirit to hear me as I offered, my prayers up, to have that spirit hear me as I'm speaking. And so I give gratitude for that grandfather's son, how it shines to bring us the light every morning. So saying miigwech is so important. And also to grandmother Moon, and she's almost full. Probably tomorrow she'll be full. And so we do our full moon ceremonies. And so I give gratitude to grandmother Moon for all that she does, how grandmother Moon teaches us about the earth, when to plant, when to harvest, and to do all these good things, and how it governs our waters and the Quail's monthly cycle. And so we give so much thanks to grandmother Moon as well. And as I directed my prayers to Shkakamekwe, Mother Earth, and giving gratitude to Mother Earth and all that she provides for us, and thinking about how, the sacred breath that we breathe, the earth that we stand on, the fire. I was thinking about this morning's fire, that sacred fire that was lit, and also for the nebe, the water, and how we lifted that water this morning to give gratitude. So much to be thankful for. And as I directed my prayers to the four directions as was given to us to live by, the four directions, that the eastern direction, and how that sun comes up in that direction. We give thanks to that doorway of the eastern doorway. And while we still have our megas, taking our prayers up to Creator, and how we say miigwech to the megas, all these feathers we give gratitude for. And so asking Creator to hear us in that direction as we give our tobacco. And I think about all the children that come into this world in that direction, and how the ones that are coming as well, the ones that are Pidas Masil, they're still coming, and saying miigwech, so they can be blessed, these children that are coming, so they can start learning our ways of all these little ceremonies that we do, from our ancestors. So I say miigwech in that direction. And as I directed my prayers to that southern doorway, I say miigwech, for that deer that stands in that doorway, that still guards that doorway, and how the deer is still giving us, mijam, that food that we need, that sustains us throughout the winter months. I say miigwech to that deer because we use all parts of that deer, so saying miigwech is very important. And I also think about the youth, especially this week, as we go into this Waawiindamaagewin, this treaty week, and how it is important for them to learn all what our ancestors have, gone through, with all these different treaties that we have, and especially the Robinson Huron Treaty in this area. So I'm very happy to learn that some of the chiefs are going out to these schools today. So I say miigwech to Gajeminedo, for that they do that work as well, as us, as everybody else for this treaty week. And as I directed my prayers to that western doorway, I say miigwech to that buffalo that buffalo is still standing there, also giving us what we need. The buffalo pelts, are used in many ceremonies. So I say miigwech and all the things that we get from the buffalo, the meat and everything else. So I say miigwech. And also I think about all the people, adult people that also need our prayers today, because they're the ones that are, doing so much work as well, taking care of their grandchildren, their children, teenagers and whatnot. So I say prayers for them as well. And as I directed, I forgot, I also said prayers and thank you, miigwech, to the Thunderbird that still brings on that rain, and how we need that rain here on the earth. So I say miigwech to that Nimki Beneshi. And as I directed my prayers to that northern direction, I also say miigwech to those ancestors that are still, in each of these doorways, giving gratitude, for all the things that they have left behind for us to find, to nurture the knowledge that they left us. And also thinking about that spirit bear, that Wapshkimokwa, the white bear, that brings us that Nojmoin. That Nojmoin is that healing. And that is what we all need as a people for this world, for even this week, as we learn and heal from all the things that we're going to be learning this week. And so I say miigwech for listening to my translation. Miigwech. Miigwech. And I probably forgot. Did anybody understand my Anishinaabe? Did I forget something? One year.
My name is Joe Kennewiya. Inajwe Gishik, Waawiindamaagewin, Legacy Dodan, Ganabajing. It's really good to be back for Treaties Recognition Week. We know since we've been participating that we get a lot of our understanding of this Waawiindamaagewin, and Waawiindamaagewin is the Anishinaabe word for promises. And so when they speak about the promises made, we take into consideration our relationship, not just with the settlers, but more so with the British Crown. And so to that end, part of our job here at Waawiindamaagewin is to really let everybody know that that's still an important relationship today. I'm going to talk a little bit about our organization, Waawiindamaagewin, and certainly from that perspective, there is a PowerPoint presentation I want to share with you guys to start off this. It was good to have that opening ceremony this morning. That was a really beautiful event that we had there. And that pipe ceremony and the water ceremony and all of those. So to proceed about the organization, let's start with who we are. We recognize the treaty helps protect who we are, our inherent rights, and we build upon the strength of this collective to enhance and foster health and wellness, Minobamaadzewin, for our people. We take this direction again from our 21 First Nations that are part of our treaty organization. They've been coming together for some 40 years, talking about the creation of this organization, but at the same time, recognizing that the federal government has not lived up to their end of the promise, and that is to increase the annuities from time to time. Next slide, please. And I guess in terms of taking a look at that, the chiefs have put together a very comprehensive strategic plan, part of which is our vision in terms of becoming a thriving, self-sufficient First Nation organization, exercising what we're saying is our inherent rights. These rights were here before the signing of the treaty, and they will continue to move forward. Our task now is to take a look at what that means, because the responsibility that we have to the land and the relationship to the land comes from the Creator. So it is really Creator's law that we are following when we move forward. Next slide, please. And that's what we call Waawiindamaagewin, the Creator's law. So as we move forward with this event this week, we sort of take into consideration, what does that mean for us as Anishinaabe people in the Robinson Huron Treaty? We know there are Anishinaabe all around us in this area, but for us, the task that we have is determining our self-sufficiency, our self-determination, based on our own governance structure, based on our own processes, Kimak and Dadwin, our culture, our way of life, and our identity, and promotion of community wellness, and finally the protection and use of treaty lands, and so this is really the basis for what we're calling treaty governance. These are the principles for which we have that relationship to Mother Earth. Next slide. And so when we talk about treaty governance and our own organization building capacity, we also must reach out and develop the relationships. The first relationship is with our own people, but there's that relationship with our neighbors all around us. And so we've been doing a lot of work to that end. Next slide. So when we talk about treaty governance, we sort of take from our ancestors, from our history of how we used to sort of operate as a people on this land. And so we've been looking at educating ourselves about what does the treaty mean? What does it mean to us? What did we understand when we signed that treaty? And certainly from our ancestors' understanding, they did not give up who they were as Anishinaabe people. They did not, they came here with a full understanding of what they had. And as one of our chiefs says, you know, we had a full canoe. We had our culture, we had our language, we had our way of life. And so none of that was taken away when we signed treaty. What was important is that we would continue to exercise who we are after the treaty. The right to hunt, fish, trap, and gather, as it's written in the treaty, should be continued to be exercised, which means that our way of life, that we should live in abundance from the land as our ancestors have done. But we know the sad history of this is not the case. Next slide. And so part of the work that we have taken upon ourselves is to take a look at building capacity around that treaty governance framework that we understand, and providing that organization to that end. Certainly in terms of taking a look at that, we know the importance of the promise, and that was to renew the annuities from time to time as the settlers began to gain from the benefit of that treaty. There's been a lot of resources that have left our Mother Earth as a result, from the mining, the forestry, the fishing. And today we look at that in terms of the proper sort of reciprocity that did not get exercised when we made that promise in the beginning. Next slide. As well, certainly from taking a look at where we are in Canada, we recognize there are a number of treaties, but we are considered a pre-confederation treaty. But we also know that when we talk about that, the relationship came long before even the coming of the white man. And I shared this dish with one spoon wampum belt here. This was made between the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe. And what this wampum belt signifies is that they agreed that they needed to hunt in each other's territory. And so they needed to share the animals and the food. And so this treaty made between the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe is really a peace treaty. It really signifies how for the common good of both of our peoples that we would share the right to hunt within each other's territory. So these are one of our very first treaties that we signed as Anishinaabe people. The second most important was signed with the Dutch and the Haudenosaunee in New York State. And this is an important relationship because it speaks about being on two roads or two canoes or two ships. And so we take a look at what the way the Dutch and our people understand is we won't get into your canoe and you won't bother us in our community. So we will not disturb each other's way of life in that manner. And so we take a look at these original sort of relationships with the settlers. It was always one of continuing to govern ourselves as we understood that being the case. Next slide. You see there the 21 logos of the 21 First Nations. Next slide. And then you see our team here that works with us doing this work. Next slide. And so we've created an organization that has brought some expertise together in terms of ability to sort of take a look at our territory as a collective in terms of mapping. We've taken a look at our relationships around us, and there are a number of issues around the overlapping boundaries that we have with our neighbors. And certainly in terms of taking a look at that, this is a map here that shows, it's a modern Ontario map of our treaty. And so you see that middle area where we are around the city of Sudbury, you see that sort of, I don't know, a brownish area there is what the Ontario government calls their territory as referring to the Robinson Huron. They recently settled with the Williams Treaty, that area in the blue, the area that really cuts out a lot of our original treaty territory understanding. Although you see that map goes from sort of northwest of Sault Ste. Marie, it goes actually to the height of land and much further, all the way to the Quebec border. But you also see within that Williams Treaty area, that blue area, there's a green squiggly line there running halfway through there, right down to the St. Lawrence River. That's a modern day treaty that's being negotiated with the Algonquins of Ontario. And so that particular line, what we've been asked by our leadership is to begin to come to some understanding with our neighbors about our shared territory. And so we've started discussions with the Algonquin. Next slide, please. And so you see some significance there of that Algonquin settlement area, which takes in most of Algonquin Park, but also takes in a very a portion of our treaty in the northwest of that territory there. And so there is definitely some overlapping issues that we have with the Algonquins of Ontario. Next slide. This is an archive map of the original treaty that signifies, where they understand that treaty was. And the way our chiefs talk about it goes from north of on Superior all the way down to around the Georgian Bay, all the way to the height of land, right down to the Severn River and even further south from there. And so this is not really itself, although it's archived, not an accurate picture of our understanding of that treaty territory, it does sort of give an understanding of the treaty relationship in the beginning. We had 17 signatories there. We have Manitoulin Island, who have a lot of members who are beneficiaries to our treaty as well. And so in terms of taking a look at that, there's parts of our territory that is unceded. And this is where the people from Wikwemikong always are very proudly acknowledging we did not surrender any land. Well, in actual fact, neither did our ancestors within the Robinson Huron, because these territories that were set aside were unceded, and we sort of allowed the settlers to use that other territory as well. So in fact, we claim that we are all on unceded territory within our own First Nation communities. Next slide. In modern times, we recognize traditionally we fished in the water. We use that fishery as the basis for sustaining who we are. It was very much a strong economy for our communities as well as livelihood. And so we've been sitting down with two First Nations, Saugeen and Nawash, to talk about our shared fishing waters. And so they've come to us and said, we would like to enter into a protocol to understand how we share this water with you in Georgian Bay. And so, this is what they are exercising in terms of our own commercial fishing within that territory. We know we have some commercial fishing within the Great Lakes. Some of us are exercising commercial fishing in a fairly significant way. And one of our communities I have to look at is Batchewana, who does that quite regularly. But all of our other communities also exercise commercial fishing, as well as food fishery, of course. We know that's a part of it as well. Next slide. So building the relationship amongst ourselves was pretty key. There's been a number of resolutions that have been put forward by the Robinson Huron chiefs asserting their willingness to cooperate and work together. And we did that again in 2018. We worked 2 or 3 years before that to come up with a declaration of how we can further work together as Anishinaabe within the treaty territory. But we also began to put down in that declaration our principles, our rights to the water within and surrounding our territory, a right to continue to make sure that even the air above us is respected in terms of who we are, our land, as we understood that land to be, the right to continue to harvest in terms of our inherent rights. And so for us as Waawiindamaagewin, this is something that we base as direction moving forward. And to that end, it was part and parcel of a major strategic plan that the chiefs have come up with to move this organization forward. Next slide. I've mentioned these principles in terms of our strategic plan. We've put it out here in terms of a demographic, using the medicine wheel as the basis for all that. The relationship we have with the leaders, with the culture and language, with the land, with our way of life. And so this becomes the basis for which we move forward in terms of treaty governance. Next slide. There's a lot that I can say about how we move forward in terms of taking a look at the things that we've been working on. I've talked about that already in terms of the strategic plan, the relationship building, the governance model, incorporating our language and ceremony. Next slide. But how do we do that in a significant way? Next slide. And so for us, in terms of doing that, there are things that we've collectively agreed to work on, and that is our celebration of our treaty gathering every year. And September 9th in 1850, almost 172 years ago to this day, to this year, was the signing of that event. And so we host an event every year now for the last several years, bringing back sort of some of the teachings that remind us about our promises, about our responsibilities as Anishinaabe people within this territory. Last year's event was hosted by Nipissing First Nation and Doquis First Nation, and we had over 600 people there. We went to our cultural advisors to look for some advice as to how we proceed. And one of the significant things that was told us is you need to bring that teaching lodge back as part of the focus of your event. And so this is where we've incorporating that teaching lodge. Last year we had over 600 people attend in person. It was a hybrid event. The year before was something similar in Sault Ste. Marie, but it's the second year that we brought in that teaching lodge. So you can see some of the pictures of that lodge going up. Some of our women who helped construct that lodge, and some of our participants there while we were at the event itself. Next slide. We've taken the opportunity to educate all of you. We have a number of treaty documents. Treaty tracts is a good one for young people. The Wampum Belt calendar, we're developing another calendar for release in December that will sort of feature aspects of our organization. Treaty transcripts, we got an elder from Wikwemikong translate the treaty into Anishinaabe. And so for us, when we talk about reviving the language, there is an importance to educate ourselves in our language about the understanding of that particular treaty. And so this is what we've made available to, and some of the communities are asking for more and more copies of these things as we move forward. Next slide. Publications, we have a protocol with the litigation fund to jointly communicate our understanding of the litigation issue. We're going to be talking about the launch of our latest version. I won't give that away, but here are some of the past ones that we've done as well. Next slide. A lot of our work does relate to treaty lands. And to that end, we've incorporated a very important historical research component to our organization. We hired people with GIS skills to develop this tool for First Nations. We've taken the time to sort of also use that to sort of educate about the significance of some of our place names, some of our historical sites, some of our significant sites around the treaty itself, especially in Sault Ste. Marie. Next slide. But the big project that we've been asked to undertake as an organization is to demonstrate that we still continue to use the land as our ancestors have used it in the past. And so we've been engaged using the model that was adopted by Sagamok Anishinaabe, where they hired an expert to work with their land users to demonstrate how much we actually use the land. And so now we're on the brink of doing that with 9 of our 21 First Nations in the eastern portion of the territory. And so with those 9 First Nations, next slide, please, we will get a better appreciation for our use and occupancy of the eastern portion of our treaty, starting off with Nipissing First Nation, moving over to Atikamekw. And we understand that the other communities are now getting more anxious to do that because they recognize that this work is important when they're talking about their own discussions with the settlers on things like mining, forestry, and other significant relationship issues that we have. One of the things that we've been asked to do by the chiefs is to also move forward on what happens when they settle the treaty itself. There will be sort of additional resources made to each community, as the treaty did in the beginning. They didn't just give money to the individuals, they gave money to the collective communities as well, to be used to help further their community lifestyle. And so that meant that communities had the ability to build a school, to build houses. And so we look to that tradition that we have in terms of that relationship with the Crown as something that we need to get ready for as we move forward with the annuities court case. We're going to talk a lot more in detail about that at this event, but certainly what we need to work with our communities is, and we're doing this as what we're calling a desktop exercise. What I mean by that is we don't want to reinvent the wheel. A lot of this information is already there through our tribal councils, our large First Nations, our unaffiliated First Nations. And so we've been able to get the approval to work with all of our treaty First Nations and their tribal councils on this desktop exercise. Next slide. We recently, in terms of our relationship building, 2 years ago, we went to Treaty 3 at an invite. I don't know if you know anything about Treaty 3 as a treaty organization in Ontario, but they're one of the numbered treaties that signed their agreement after the Robinson-Huron Treaty. We know there are a number of treaties that came afterwards, and it was really about Canada striking that Crown relationship based on, I don't know if you know the original treaty that was signed, but the Royal Proclamation of 1763 and the Treaty of Niagara. And so you see in this particular wampum belt, the Treaty of Niagara, 1764, it was where that covenant chain was made with us and the 24 nations around the Great Lakes area. And so the Crown at that time felt it was important to have us not as children, as we understand the Indian Act to be, but as allies. Allies in terms of protecting the Crown's interest in this area. And so what was the Crown's interest in this area? They wanted to make sure that this was soon before the breakaway by the Americans. And so they wanted to make sure that that relationship would continue so that the British would have certainly a relationship with our people moving forward in their development of our lands back in the day. And so from that particular understanding of that particular covenant, we do not forget that we were not children of the Crown, we were allies on a treaty-to-treaty, nation-to-nation relationship. And so some of us have gone out to work as allies with a number of treaties. We spent a good week at the Treaties 1 to 11 gathering in Enoch First Nation. And we said, we're here to become allies with you in our fight to protect our inherent rights as treaty organizations. Next slide. Looking ahead, next slide. We've taken the task in our organizational development to move away from the standard nonprofit corporation structure. The chiefs did not want to have that. We did not have that relationship when we had treaty. So why should we have that relationship today? And so they've agreed that we'll move forward with an organization that did not have a Crown corporation, but that we would operate as more as an association of chiefs. We've taken on the task of letting the settlers know we are here and we are here to stay. From within our territory, we have a number of Anishinaabe treaty billboards throughout the territory. For now, you know, in terms of our what that means, it's just letting the settlers know that we haven't gone away. We're still here. We'll continue to host a number of gatherings like this event, and certainly in terms of using these opportunities to educate our own leaders on the importance of treaty governance. Next slide. So I've already mentioned some of these other events already, but new to these things is our increasing our relationship with our knowledge keepers, the elders, but also beginning to develop that relationship with our young people. So you'll see this week is bringing those knowledge keepers together to speak about those things that were important to us prior, but also to guide us as we move forward. Our young people, to get them to be excited about what it means to be within the Robinson-Huron Treaty Territory, but also to instill it with them some direction in terms of telling us what's important to them as young people. And of course, all of this is incorporating our Anishinaabemowin throughout the whole process. So this is how we see ourselves moving forward, along with the desktop study, the historical research, and the land use that we're doing. Next slide. I want to thank you today for taking the time to listen to what we're doing at Waawiindamaagewin. And I'll turn it back to the host now, who will move forward with the next part of our agenda. Huron Waawiindamaagewin.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, Ani, Chimigwech Earl for that great update. We have many events happening this week, so we just wanted to make sure that we give opportunity to a lot of our partners to share as well. And happening right now at 10 o'clock, the Anishinaabe Nation is launching is talking about their treaty curriculum. So I believe Jolene's putting in the chat the link to their group. So it's starting at 10 if you guys want to log on to there. And we'll be back here at 11 a.m. with our treaty store launch. I just wanted to give a couple of shout outs. I know there's a lot of people watching us from Weequampong, Nipissing, Garden River, Blind River, and also the police force in London. So Chimigwech, and I hope you guys can all join us again at 11 a.m. Chimigwech, Bamapi, Quadman. My mom left for Vegas this morning.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Got period.
That is why it's important. But that said, I'm very excited to be part of the launch of the new meeting, understanding our relationship. That's what we call our essential knowledge in all our students and creating. There are a number of treaties that
So Joe, for the launch, are you gonna skip through like every page and you're just gonna go through quickly? What are you saying? Go quickly, okay, the couple minutes. I'll just go by your speed, whatever you have on there and then. Okay. And then I'll say they should have been all delivered to the communities.
Yeah.
We are getting more. So be on the lookout. And I want to make sure we save enough for Nabising. Because they're on the cover. It's cool. Yeah, they only play about 20 for those students.
Yeah.
I think they're coming to the play.
Okay,
Did you see a class register from Nabising? Or not quite. Were you talking to Bonnie or?
I did get an email and I said 13 plus there is swearing, so I wasn't sure,
Okay, so like I'm getting Bonnie confused with.
but Bonnie's from,
Yes, so I gotta get the other one from Nabising and tell her to come, because she has high school students, right? Yeah, so they'll probably come, like, I'll tell them to play. Get more bodies in.
yeah. And another class that was asking for grades 9 to 12, and I'll just say, yeah, come,
Yeah, they bring them, you know, like it's, we have 300 seats, right? So, and Angie's getting a little worried that we're getting out late, so we're gonna have an empty room. Like, we'll work on filling it up, you know? She's calling me this morning, you know. So, she's like, why isn't it too close? I was like, I don't know, you guys figure it out. We're happy to put whatever you guys want. Like, you know, if you want full. How much people did we have in the Zoom room?
of the early Discovery, and the shuttle has cleared the tower. Every four computers now have primary control of critical vehicle functions.
Yeah. Okay, Ani, welcome back. I hope you guys enjoyed the presentation from the Anishinaabe Nation. Chimigwesh to everybody for joining us. So as I mentioned, we have a very exciting treaty week. And before we get to our legal presentation from Diane, we have a couple of exciting announcements. First thing we wanted to do was to launch to share with you our treaty store. So we're going to throw to Mitch in Nipissing at Green Medicine, who has been helping us with the treaty store and who is hosting the store for us. So Mitch, are you there?
Hello. Yes.
Yeah. Awesome, buddy. Take it away.
Ani, Turtle Island and especially the Robin Huron Treaty Territory. We are and excited to announce that we went through a soft opening the last 8 weeks. We're very grateful to all our customers and appreciated that everyone that helped has navigated through technical stuff that we have to get through to make sure everything runs smoothly as we roll into this grand opening that's coming up in the next week. And we're very thankful for everyone that was patient with us. I know that some things took a little longer and we apologize, but we're getting better and forward. And that was the whole point of the soft opening, and to say Shimigwech to everyone that purchased from us during that time online at www.treaty1850store.ca. So as we were discussing and we listened to our customers that were letting us know what issues are, and one came up that is shipping. Unfortunately, get around a high cost of shipping. But what we're going to do is we want to, I guess, open up, and we talked about opening up maybe some official retailers. So maybe some entrepreneurs or businesses that are out there that are wanting to expand that already are established business. We're wanted to open it up to some people who want to sell some retail for us as well, so they become official retailers. And we want to have it on First Nations, so we continue the tax-free shopping and a tax-free experience with this business. And we're looking for maybe 3, if we get some interest, to 5 retailers across the 21 First Nations. We want to take applications. So if you're seriously maybe interested in this, send us an email. We'll send you the application. We'll get you application form. There's going to be an option A, option B, we're thinking. But so it'll be all the line and some of the lines. So then, but we want to keep it open to all big or small businesses. If you have a spot in your store, or even if it's maybe a First Nation that wants to do it or for something. But we just want to leave this open right now. We're ironing out some details, but we know for sure we just want one location per First Nation at this time. And maybe, I don't know even if we're going to get per area, but at least places where people can go and purchase our gear to show your support, to show that that you're interested and promoting Robinson Huron Treaty, to bring it to light. We want to flood the whole area. So everyone, you hear it on the radio now. Robinson Huron, brought to you by Robinson Huron Treaty Territory. You hear it all over, but we want to bring it out to light, so then everyone start realizing that this is a real. Like I heard someone announce that treaties never expire. So that's huge, and Canada and the government's got to realize that this is something. So our big announcement is that we are looking for retailers and businesses, entrepreneurs that are already established, that have a little piece of area in their store. They put up some apparel, and email us treaty1850store@gmail.com. I will ask Share to put that up in the comments, or we could do it on, and we'll post it somewhere so everyone that seriously interested could apply. So if we're probably only going to do a max of 5, and then hopefully we get 3, but we'll see how it goes. Okay. But if there's more than one store interested on a First Nation, we'll probably just do like some kind of pick a name. Okay. So that just basically, we need to be more accessible to our people. And that's what we decided it would be great to do. And that's our announcement. We're very happy. I'm very thankful again for our employees that helped us get all this work, endless amount of work. Shaylin, Summer, Valerie, and our newest employee we like to announce for the Robinson Huron Treaty Apparel is that we hired Oskuchi Bob, and he's from Nipissing First Nation here, where we are located, beautiful Nipissing First Nations, and that's our first employee for the Robinson Huron Treaty store. So we're very excited, and we'd like to welcome him to our business as part of the Green Medicine family, and we're very thankful for his application as a young guy who came into the store and applied, and we know his parents, and they were surprised that he was looking for a job. So we're thank you, Os, for coming in and showing your youthful and being available to go out and confidence to get a job. All right, congratulations, and we welcome you. So that's another big thing. It's creating jobs, and that's what the Robinson Huron thing is about, is creating employment, and that's what we want to do as the official supplier. I'd like to thank my customers again, my employees, and especially my beautiful family, Carrie Lynn Pelche from Wikwemikong First Nations, and our beautiful son, Maximus McGeezy Dokis. And I'm thankful for them for all the extra hours I got to put in here and being supportive. And I love them with all my heart. And I love you guys as well, all our brothers and sisters out there in Robinson First Nation territory. And I think that's all I got to say. Cher, I think I'll put it back to you, and we'll go from there. And again, treaty1850store.ca. Miigwech.
Well, awesome, Mitch. Miigwech for that great update, and miigwech for going live from your store today. And if you guys haven't noticed, you've probably been seeing a lot of our gear all around the territory. Mitch and Carrie and the crew at Green Medicine were able to provide us with, I think, 300 t-shirts and 300 hoodies that we gave out at the treaty gathering. They created us some more t-shirts that we're going to bring out to the high schools this week while we're there. And we're hoping to maybe have them at one of our live events. So if you're looking to get some treaty gear, you can come to Sudbury, hopefully Thursday, and grab some gear. So we'll post that on our website, or we'll announce it on our in-person activities. So yes, Chimigwech, Mitch, once again, I think you guys put it in the chat, treaty1850store.ca. You can get your treaty gear there. They have a lot of different items, and there's also an advertisement for the treaty store in our magazine. So on the back page of the magazine, which is a perfect segue to our magazine launch. So we have the brand new edition of the Dagwage 2022 Robinson Huron Treaty Times, Waawiindamaagewin. So these have been all delivered to our communities. So we've been hoping to get them into your mailboxes. If you haven't received one yet, you'll be receiving some this week. So go get to those mailboxes and check them out. We have a lot of great content. Our cover story here, our cover feature, focuses on our treaty gathering, Restoring the Balance 2022. And all these beautiful smiling faces you can see here are some of the youth that attended our treaty gathering this summer. And these are all students from Nipissing High School in Nipissing. So Chimigwech, and if you guys are watching from Nipissing, we do have copies for all of you. So we're going to get those to you this week, and hopefully you'll be able to join us at some of our online events. So we're very happy with this edition. It took us a while. As you know, we had 2 other editions last year. So we're hopefully moving to a 1 per year annual edition. But we have some great feature stories in here. So Jolene's quickly sharing with you our issue. So we do have a digital version available. We'll also have a PDF version available on our website. But through the issue, you can flip through, you can see all of the great content that we have. We talk a lot about treaty governance. We feature a lot of our people and the work that they're doing. Beautiful pictures, beautiful magazine. Talk a lot about our use and occupancy study. Some of the work that we're doing here at Robinson Huron Waawiindamaagewin, as well as some of the work that our legal team and our litigation fund are working on. So I encourage you to check it out, download it, share it, print it off, make sure your family members get copies, make sure you share with your neighbors so everybody can learn about the work that we're doing here at Robinson Huron Treaty. And there's also a great feature that in there on the 1836 pipe that was at OCF this summer. So tons of great articles in there. We're very pleased and very happy with this launch. And we just ordered a few more copies. So if you're looking to get your copy, please contact some of us. I think both of our emails are in there, or you can reach out to any of the emails that we have on our website. So we talk a lot about Anishinaabe. We have our TEK elders in there. We have Edna Mantuabi. We have a lot of language components in there. We have some elders from Wasauksing sharing as well. Our elder Lila, she's always very happy to help us. And we also feature a lot of our community members who are working on their businesses or who are, focusing on some treaty businesses across the territory. So there's our website. We also have a gift guide, a holiday gift guide. So if you're looking for options for, gifts for your family or your friends, you can definitely check that out. That's some of our Anishinaabe artisans from across the territory. And it shows links where you can reach them. And finally, there is the advertisement for the Treaty 1850 store. Feel free to check it out. Go to Mitch's store, get some gear. Let us know, or come see us in person and we'll have some gear for you, hopefully this week. So that is our magazine. We're very happy with it and we hope you are too. Any comments, feedback, please feel free to share. We're always looking at improving our magazine and our communications, and also let us know the best way to reach you guys. So on that note, we were also planning to unveil our new flag today, but we're going to actually wait till we have our in-person event. So we're going to do that later on this week on Thursday. So we will be going on Zoom on Thursday, but we'll also be live from City Hall here in Sudbury in council chambers. So be on the lookout for our new flag. And we'll have Leroy with us talking about how the flag came to be and a little bit about restoring the balance. So Chimigwech. So that's kind of what we wanted to share this morning. We're also going to be having our treaty law principles in the RHT annuities case very shortly. That'll be starting here at 11:30 this morning. And that'll be with Diane Corbier. So we definitely want you guys to check that out. Is there anything else I needed to share before we pause for Diane? Yeah, perfect. Do you want me to do a little bit of US?
Sure.
Okay, so but while we're waiting for Diane, I know that Earl did a presentation on the Waawiindamaagewin and some of the projects that we're working on. I want to spend a little bit more time just focusing on one of our projects, which is the use and occupancy study. So he briefly talked about this, but this is one of our major research projects because it's helping us understand how our people are using the land. So we have another staff member here that works with us, Stephanie Recollet. She is our use and occupancy analyst. So she's like the key point of contact and coordination for our communities. Next slide, Jolene. So you guys are probably wondering what our use and occupancy study is. So we're conducting a use and occupancy study for our 21 signatory First Nations. Because we have 21 and it's a very large project, we're going to be breaking this up into smaller manageable groups. So our first group will be the Eastern group, and we've already started that process. So we have We have 9 communities in our first pilot project. So we've started with Nipissing First Nation, and we're going to be working with the Tikmikshing as well to get their interviews done. So use and occupancy study is trying to document the way our people are using our land. So we've gone through a strong research design process where we've interviewed or we've brought together a lot of our land users to kind of help us sort out the framework for that survey. And what basically happened is we develop a survey and we're going to be sitting with your land users and interviewing them through a mapping process where we'll spend about 2 hours interviewing them one-on-one. And we're working with Terry Tobias, who is one of the leading experts in documenting use and occupancy knowledge and has been already working with many of our communities in the territory. So you can see our first Eastern group includes 9 of our communities, the eastern side of our treaty territory. Phase 3 will include our central group, and then phase 4 will be some of our communities on the western side. Next slide, Jolene. So here's our timeline. We've been working on our use and occupancy project probably for about 2 years now, maybe 3. And a big part of that was spent on the research design process. So really figuring out what are the parameters of our research, really engaging all of our communities, making sure that we're capturing all of the areas that we're hunting, fishing, occupying, making sure we're capturing all those species that we're harvesting. So that way, when we develop our survey, it's very inclusive. So we we had a big research design workshop with all of our communities here in Sudbury in February of 2019. And after that, we went and did mini research design workshops within each of our 9 communities. And we would sit with about 5 land users for a day and kind of go through this whole process of making sure that we understand their where they're using the land. After that, we went through testing our methodology process. So we interviewed 18 land users from all of our two members from each of our 9 pilot communities. So they went through that survey that we developed to make sure that the survey is meaningful and that it's easy to administer and that the questions are clear. If there was any areas that were unclear, we went back and we fixed all that up. So that was our testing of our methodology phase. And now we're entering data collection, which is very exciting because we've been working for a long time to get to this phase. So we just started data collection in October with Nipissing. So we had our first data collection blitz and it was very successful. And we have another one lined up for either this week or next week. So if you're a Nipissing member, make sure you get in contact with Curtis Avery if you're interested in participating in an interview session. He has a schedule there. We'll have our research team there ready and available to capture those interviews. So yeah, make sure you get in contact with Curtis at the Natural Resources and Lands Office. Okay, next slide, Jolene. So as I mentioned, we completed our research design workshops. Next slide. Sorry, I was a little bit ahead here, Joe. We did all of our test interviews, so that was good. We did a lot of use. So this summer, we brought in 18 researchers to train them on our research methodology and our data collection manual. So that way, when they're doing the interviews in our communities, they know exactly the meaning of all the questions and how to code it and how to map it. So here you see Terry Tobias. He is our lead specialist, and he wrote the book Living Proof. And so there you can also see him interviewing one of our Nipissing members. So that's Tom Stevens from Nipissing. You can see the great big map on the table. You can see Terry marking some points on that map. So he'll walk through this whole survey with Tom. Tom will show us areas where, you know, he traps beaver, where he harvests maple syrup, and a wide variety of many other things that Tom is harvesting. He was a very intense land user, so he had many, many maps, and he in fact had to come back for a second session. So this is the kind of information that we're trying to capture, and we want this information for the whole treaty territory. So we've started off in Nipissing. Sagamok has done a similar project in 2013, so we were also building on the great work that they've done there. So here's Pano in the corner. He's one of our researchers, and he's who you'll be seeing at Nipissing in the data collection event. So once Nipissing's done, we're hoping to move to a Tikmikshing, and then any other communities who are ready at those first 9 pilot communities will be reaching out and trying to coordinate sessions with you guys in the upcoming years. Next slide, Jolene. So why is the use and occupancy study important? Why are we undertaking this work? So it's going to be, you know, our foundational information to make informed decisions, right? So if we understand how our people are using our lands, we'll be able to do better land management, make better choices and decisions for our community members. So first of all, it'll help us protect our Anishinaabe rights and interests, help monitor our lands within the treaty territory. It'll add to our baseline understanding and help us determine any impacts that may be occurring from industrial development. It'll help us to create any type of policies that we may need when we start getting into treaty lands management, help with some of our assertions, as well as, you know, building some of those relationships. So next slide, please, Jolene. So here is the brochure that we created for the use and occupancy study. So it highlights the whole reason why we're doing it, provides any frequently asked questions, shows a couple of maps on there that helps us understand what we're trying to achieve. So we're showcasing a lot of the Sagamuk maps in there, as they were the first community in our territory to do this. And when they mapped their study, when they were done, they had 23,000 points on their land of where their people are using the land. So 23,000 for Sagamuk times, you know, our 21 communities, you can imagine what that map would look like for our whole treaty territory. So it'll look similar to Sagamuk's, but across the whole area. So that is available on our website. If you want to learn more, you can download it, you can share it, or check it out. And then if you go to the next slide, we also have, we're working on a website for our UOS. So you can check out any information about our project on that page. It'll have a participant sign-up sheet. So if you're interested in, you know, being interviewed or being on the interview list, feel free to fill that out, and we will get in contact with you when we get to our community. And also in the brochure, it kind of highlights, you know, what kind of people we're looking for to interview, you know. So if you have a strong relationship with the land, if you're out there a lot and you have, if you're doing a lot of harvesting, then we definitely want you to come to our area. And now what's one thing that's important about our study is it's about you and your life. What have you done in your life on the land? So when you're done, you're going to be able to get a copy of your map that shows your unique relationship to the land. So we're really excited about this project, and we want a lot of people to participate. And if you guys are, you know, and if you guys want us to come to your community to talk about this project, we're more than happy to do so. So feel free to reach out to us. Next slide, Jolene. So as we were trying to get the word out about our project, our team have been out and about in communities trying to share this information. So Stephanie has been at a lot of our powwows this summer. We were at our Okemuk assembly sharing about the work that we're doing. So you may have seen us around. Next slide. I did mention that we were doing our first data collection in Nipissing. So yeah, we did the first one October 11th, and now we're starting our next one next week. So the team will be in Nipissing for 10 days. So if you're ready to do an interview, feel free to reach out to Curtis. He's just there waiting for you guys to sign up. And for anybody who does participate in an interview, we do provide an honorarium to say Chimigwech for your time and participating. So we will provide $150 cash honorarium for those who participate. So feel free to reach out to Curtis and sign up. And if you are in Atikameksheng, we're going to be moving to your area, hopefully in the new year. So feel free to sign out the participant form, so at least we can get your name on the list, or reach out to the Lands and Resources team with Michelle and Robert in Atikameksheng, and they'll help you get connected to us. So that's our use and occupancy study. Here's Stephanie's contact information. She's our use and occupancy analyst. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to her or to myself, and we'd be happy to share. I think I did mention, I think I actually missed the videos. Jolene, if you can maybe go back to that slide, just so that they can see the links to the, or maybe we'll put them in the chat. We do have a lot of videos that we created for the use and occupancy study, so that way we can start sharing information about that. And we want you to watch them. They're short 5-minute videos, but it gives you a little bit more information on the importance of it and why we want to do it. So on that note, I want to say Chimigwech, and maybe if we have time, we can share one while we're waiting for Diane. So we should have our Diane, our legal principles update coming at you in 5 minutes. So stay tuned. And on that note, Bama P, we'll see you soon.
From Segmuk. I'm here to talk a little bit about the use and occupancy stuff. But I want you to look back on here. The sound of the water has not changed since the beginning of time, and neither has the Anishinaabe right to the land. And using the UOS, or use and occupancy studies, allows us to recall memories from our hunting experiences, hunting with relatives, hunting with friends, exploring. All of these things that are important to the memory makeup of First Nations. And it's really important that in doing this type of work, that all of our hunters, our trappers, our fishermen get engaged, because it shows them that we've never stopped doing what the Creator had given us. And that's the ability to be self-sustaining, the ability to look at the world from the Anishinaabe perspective, but also the ability to have those family moments that are important to part of the culture, part of the history, and that we have the ability to look and understand what makes Anishinaabe Anishinaabe, and take those abilities and those skills and that knowledge and have the understanding that when we move forward into the future, everything that we need to understand, we're keeping. Sometimes people will argue if we write things down, it is permission for us to forget. But we're not forgetting. We're leaving a legacy, both memory, the physical memory, but also a paper memory. And the greater good benefits all of the Anishinaabe.
elders, chiefs, Ani Bojo, Wajgesh Nido Kwe Dijnakazin, Makwado Dem, Chiging Donjaba. Congratulations on another Treaty Week program. I have no doubt it will be a success. Through the Robinson-Huron Treaty of 1850 annuities case, we have seen the need for restoring balance in the treaty relationship between the First Nations and the Crown. The treaty law principles I want to focus on today is the Anishinaabe perspective. Ontario purports not to challenge the trial judge's findings about the Anishinaabe perspective and the history of the Crown-Anishinaabe relationship. They seem to have little to say about this. Ontario asked the Ontario Court of Appeal and now the Supreme Court of Canada to adopt an interpretation of the treaty that is not only inconsistent with the Anishinaabe perspective, but entirely ignorant and dismissive of it. From what we see and hear from Ontario submissions to date, it sounds like Ontario is suggesting that both the Anishinaabe and the Crown in 1850 thought that paying $1.60 with a possible upper limit of only $4 for complete and unfettered access to Anishinaabe Aking was perfectly acceptable, no matter how valuable that territory turned out to be. Because the Anishinaabe could not have expected to be treated as equal partners by the Crown, worthy of respect and worthy of a fair share of the wealth produced from their own territory. The Supreme Court of Canada told us in Mikisew that to give effect to reconciliation in the interpretation of treaties, it is critical to give equal weight to the perspective of the Indigenous treaty partner, not just the Crown. By ignoring the historical context of that treaty relationship and Anishinaabe perspective, Ontario's position does not serve reconciliation at all. The trial judge and the Ontario Court of Appeal took serious perspective of the Indigenous treaty partner, not just the Crown. By ignoring the historical context of that treaty relationship and Anishinaabe perspective, Ontario's position does not serve reconciliation at all. The trial judge and the Ontario Court of Appeal took seriously the duty to learn about the Anishinaabe perspective. The trial judge heard over 60 hours of testimony from chiefs, elders, and experts. She sets out in her decision many findings about Anishinaabe perspectives, such as the qualities of leadership and the metaphorical discourse with relations, protocols of diplomacy, and principles of treaty alliance. She found these Anishinaabe perspectives and practices would have informed what the Anishinaabe leaders intended at the Treaty Council of 1850 and how they would have understood their agreement with the Crown. I will now review some of these important findings for you. The trial judge found that the relationships were central to the Anishinaabe worldview. She found, quote, from Anishinaabe perspective, the central goal of the treaty was to renew their relationship with the Crown, which was grounded in the Covenant Chain Alliance and visually represented on wampum belts with images of two figures holding hands as part of two links in a chain. To a great extent, the Crowns agreed with this proposition, end quote. The trial judge found that agreements to share territory were made around council fires, which were hosted by Ogama. At paragraphs 27 to 30, the trial judge found that Ogama had to demonstrate a record of accomplishment in other roles first, perhaps as a warrior or a hunter, therefore meeting the tests of being a good provider or exhibiting an ability to protect their people. Ogama were expected to be generous. Good leaders would accumulate wealth in order to give it away. Generosity, care for the land and others, and commitment to provide for one's people were foundational to the political authority. Ogama did not assert authority over something or someone, but embodied principles of responsibility to and respect for the autonomy of others, as demonstrated through deliberative and consensus-based processes. Ogama are bound by laws and their obligations to the people. Ogama could negotiate the shared use of lands and resources, but they could not violate Anishinaabe law. Dr. Bohacker explained that the Anishinaabe in 1850 would have understood the augmentation clause as a treaty obligation, and that they would have expected the crown or the queen or Chigimakwe to fulfill the treaty obligation in a manner consistent with the qualities and expectations embedded within that kinship and leadership title. It is for this reason that the trial judge found that the concept of discretion, as Ontario uses that term to mean an unfettered and unreviewable discretion, could not have formed part of the common intention of the Robinson-Huron Treaty parties. Given that the trial judge's findings about the Anishinaabe perspective on leadership and principles of treaty making, it would not have been possible for the Anishinaabe to intend that decisions about increases to the annuity, whether explained or translated as mandatory or discretionary, would be entirely unbounded from principles like generosity, fairness, reciprocity, and mutual responsibility. Such an understanding was impossible because from an Anishinaabe perspective, treaty commitments were by their nature commitments of mutual care. The Anishinaabe would not have conceived of a treaty obligation to decide whether to increase the annuity beyond $4 could be made without regard to the interests and needs, to their interests and needs, The trial judge found at paragraph 423, and I quote, "These principles of respect, responsibility, reciprocity, and renewal were foundational to the Anishinaabes' understanding of relationships. For the Anishinaabe, the treaties were not a contract and were not transactional. They were the means by which the Anishinaabe would continue to live in harmony with the newcomers and maintain relationships in unforeseeable and evolving circumstances." The trial judge made several findings about the Anishinaabe relationship to Anishinaabe Aki. The Anishinaabe connection to and relationship with Anishinaabe Aki was and is central to their worldview. The trial judge recognized this, stating at paragraphs 56 to 60, and I quote, "When the Anishinaabe speak of creation, they recognize that they were brought into a complex web of relationships operating across the land." And at paragraph 60, quote, "As the last placed within creation, the Anishinaabe could not act in ways that would violate those relationships that came before their placement on the land and that were already in existence across creation," end quote. The Anishinaabe relationship with the land is the bedrock of their society. Two of the organizing principles of Anishinaabe laws and systems of governance are learned from Fred Kelly at paragraph 21. Pamatsawin, life, where everything is alive and everything is sacred. And Wadzawin, the way of the creator, which encompasses the 7 grandfather teachings or 7 sacred laws of creation. And Anishinaabe understood themselves as merely one part of creation, deeply connected to and interdependent on the larger collectivity of other beings. Anishinaabe engage with the creation in meaningful ways that nourish and balance them physically and spiritually. the Anishinaabe have always been open to new aspects of the deeply interdependent world and relationship with Anishinaabe-Akin. But they could not have agreed to a treaty that would sever their relationship to the land or compromise their ability to continue being sustained from that relationship with Anishinaabe-Akin. Apart from the established protocols for sharing territories, Anishinaabe were exceedingly strict with regard to unauthorized intrusion into their territories. Through treaties, Anishinaabe did not give up their relationship to the land, but extended and shared it with the Crown. Anishinaabe understood treaties as living relationships, sacred agreements that bring newcomers into our existing relationship with Anishinaabe-Akin and all of creation. Newcomers are incorporated into existing web of relationships through kinship metaphors. Kinship metaphors entailed obligations of mutual care and responsibility, much like kin relationships as conceived from a Euro-Canadian perspective. At paragraph 47, the trial judge found, and I quote, "In 1850, kinship metaphors were still very much relevant and defined the expectations, perspectives, and understandings of both the Crown and the Anishinaabe in respect of the making, interpretation, and implementation of the Robinson Treaties. In the context of the negotiations of the Robinson Treaties, the use of kinship terms served as diplomatic formality, which was not, however, divorced from the underlying metaphors that accompanied kinship terms. Although the Crown and the Anishinaabe came to the negotiation table from different worldviews, there was a reciprocal use and understanding of kinship metaphors." End quote. At trial and the Ontario Court of Appeal, we discussed events leading up to the Treaty of Niagara in 1764. Another key component views. There was a reciprocal use and understanding of kinship metaphors. End quote. At trial and the Ontario Court of Appeal, we discussed events leading up to the Treaty of Niagara in 1764. Another key component of the historical context that the trial judge made findings about was the historical relationship between the Crown and the Anishinaabe. Crown actors like Treaty Commissioner Robinson understood that the Anishinaabe saw treaty relationships as establishing responsibilities to provide mutual care as kin. The Crown performed the role of treaty partner and invoked metaphors and language that the Anishinaabe would have understood, as the Crown accepting its responsibility to deal with them as kin. For example, the Treaty Council was conducted at the Anishinaabe Council Fire under the Anishinaabe system of law and governance, respecting their ceremonies and protocols and in their language. This demonstrated to the Anishinaabe the Crown continued to respect and acknowledge their laws and autonomy. Second, Robinson gave out pounds of tobacco and distributed many gifts, including kettles, medals, and food. In the context of the treaty relationship between the Anishinaabe and the Crown, those items have an important symbolic significance. This demonstrated to the Anishinaabe that the Crown continued to acknowledge its obligations and responsibilities to take care of their treaty partner. Third, even up to the time of the Treaty Council, the Crown continued to acknowledge the military assistance provided by the Anishinaabe. At paragraph 95 of her reasons, the trial judge found, in September of 1849, for example, Indian Superintendent Thomas G. Anderson presented Chief Shingwakos and Chief Tagawini, sorry, with medals for their services in the War of 1812. I note again the presentation of medals took place during the Vidal-Anderson Commission, whose report was instrumental in the treaty. It was also just weeks before the affair at Mica Bay, which was also a critical turning point that pushed the Crown to make the treaty. And further, I note that it was Chief Shingwakos and Chief Tagawinene that the recipients of medals who also gave speeches to the Governor General at the opening of the Treaty Council of 1850, which, by Robinson's own diary account, was marked with military pomp and circumstance, including declarations of attachment to the Queen. The trial judge heard extensive evidence like this and made key findings about the Anishinaabe perspective and about how the representatives of the Crown, from Sir William Johnson to William Benjamin Robinson, demonstrated their understanding of the Anishinaabe perspective through their actions for nearly a century. Findings like these are part of what supports the trial judge's finding at paragraph 214 of her reasons, where she states, the location of the Treaty Council, as well as the protocols and procedures followed, indicate that the British, including Robinson, had developed at least a functional understanding of the Anishinaabe systems of law, diplomacy, and language. The trial judge found that Crown representatives and Anishinaabe leaders developed a mutually understood diplomatic discourse that they used in decades prior to the Robinson treaties. This discourse included symbols, metaphors, ceremonies, and items of material culture. Through the alliance relationship, the British developed understandings of Anishinaabe protocols and traditions sufficiently to incorporate them into their diplomatic exchanges. The undisputed facts that the Anishinaabe and the Crown were still acknowledging the Covenant Chain Alliance and treating each other with mutual respect in 1850. I could go on and on. However, despite the acknowledgement and understanding of the Anishinaabe perspective from the Ontario Superior Court, Justice Hennessy, the trial judge, and the Ontario Court of Appeal, Ontario completely ignores the Anishinaabe perspective. In fact, they now, in written submissions at the Supreme Court of Canada, continue to ignore the Anishinaabe perspective. The only reference to the Anishinaabe oral history at the Court of Appeal was from an affidavit of Mashakayash. And in Supreme Court of Canada, written submission is from Elder Rita Corbier, but they misunderstood her evidence. We say we had oral history from Elder Stevens and Elder Mekadeben at trial. Their evidence followed an elder's protocol that was developed to receive elder evidence in a respectful way to accommodate the Anishinaabe perspective. Chiefs of the communities were invited to take the stand to attest to the credentials of the elders and to their authority and acceptance as elders. This is in accordance with Anishinaabe ways and in accordance with the admission of elder testimony in common law courts. The Elders' Protocol, which was adopted by an order of the court, to our knowledge, is a first in a provincial superior court in Canada. I want to show you some examples of how we use the Anishinaabe perspective at the trial court. The trial court and the Court of Appeal hearings are still archived and can be watched. So please feel free when you have time, to go and watch more of this testimony. So, as required by the Elders Protocol, Chief Sayers of Batchewana gave evidence about Anishinaabe perspective and the importance of Elder Stevens. Let's have a listen to some of that evidence now. I want you about Anishinaabe perspective and the importance of Elder Stevens. Let's have a listen to some of that evidence now. I want you inform the court that you, before becoming chief, been told to work with 13 elders. Is Irene Stevens one of the 13 elders that you work with?
Yes, Irene is one.
And what are, you described about the special characteristics of elders. Can you tell us a bit about why Irene Stevens is such an important elder?
For us, and as soon as I became chief, the people continually reminded me that you got to make sure you incorporate Irene into work that you do, because Irene has the true, pure, historical memory of our people's relationship and our cultural teachings. She didn't pick it up in the 60s or 70s. She was born with it. She grew up with it. It's who she is. Her cultural understandings, her historical understandings. Her dad was chief quite a ways back as well, and she just has had the opportunity to witness and see so much of our Indigenous worldview through time. She has the ability to share that, and she has no problem sharing her understandings with leadership today, and reminds us of things that we shouldn't forget in the work that we do. One of the first things that she told me, she says, "That's not the treaty." She said, "Where's fire? Where's sweetgrass? Where's Sama? Sama's supposed to be in that." And I was saying, how could that be in there? But it's the spiritual concept that she understood, that there was supposed to be this incorporation into that document of our spiritual perspective, and how that those spirits came to help us with that, and we're not doing that anymore with the honoring of the spiritual side of the way the treaty was supposed to look. So she's really dear to me, and I believe she's really dear to our people as far as the wisdom and the knowledge that she carries, as far as her historical knowledge is concerned, her spiritual knowledge, cultural knowledge, her language.
Do you have an example that you want to share with the court about a time when Elder Stevens shared some of that knowledge with the people of Batchewana?
Yeah. When you go from Gouli Mission, you go to the west end of Sault Ste. Marie, and you go to where Lake Superior opens up. And a couple of bays down on the northeast shore of Lake Superior is Gouli Mission, or Gouli Bay. And they call that Jouagouadam. But when there was no highways, and there was just trails, the elders and the people would use Lake Superior as the highway. So whenever they'd come to Sault Ste. Marie to trade and to do things, they would use Lake Superior as the highway. And they would, out at Red Rock, out near Grocap, there was a place there. So when they would come to Baoting, they would come in and trade their baskets, and they'd trade their rugs, and they'd trade their berries. They would come to Baoting. And what she reminded me of, what she told me, was that they'd head back to Gouli afterwards. And when they got to this place over there, they call it Bakiwa Kong Namoye, where the frog woman sits. And it's right at Red Rock, they call it now. But right there is it would be the south end of Gouli Mission, Gouli Bay. And if it was really windy, they wouldn't be able to cross the bay in their boats. So she said that this rock formation was maybe 100 meters off the shore of Gouli Bay, the south side. And she remembers the old ladies going out there, hiking up their skirts and walking out into the water about 100 meters. And there was this rock formation of a frog woman with her legs crossed, and in her lap was a natural bowl, a natural rock formation. And that rock formation was in like that, in the formation of a bowl, in the shape of a bowl. And that's where the elders would put sema into that bowl. And as soon as they put tobacco or sema into that bowl, the water would calm down. And then she remembers saying, hurry up, everybody get in the boats. And that's what she would tell us. And they'd all run back to their boats and get into the boats and get in, and then they'd cross Gouli Bay. And when they get to the other side, the winds would pick back up. And so maybe 15 years ago, we decided we're going to go look for this rock formation. We're going to find Frog Woman. And Frog Woman was nowhere to be found. We took our canoes up and down the coast there where she said it would be, where it was at the time. And we couldn't find it. We went up and down, up and down. And then she said, see, that's because we're not using sema. And she says, you know what happens? She says, when we need something and we ask the spirits for something, the spirits will give us what we need. And if we don't use it anymore, they go back to the spirit world. She said, so that spirit that was presented and was needed by the people at that time came and worked for the people at that time. And there was feasts, and there was sema, and there was things that were used to have that spirit work for us and be here. But over time, we no longer fed that spirit. We no longer put sema down anymore. We didn't have feasts. So that spirit went back. And that spirit isn't there anymore. You ain't going to find that spirit, because she thought maybe it might have been there, but it wasn't there anymore because we didn't ask or didn't take care of it and look after it. So, but if whatever we need, she would tell us, and we pray and we put our sema down, we'll get whatever we need today. So those are the kinds of stories that she would tell us about the different places, the different spirits on the land, in the area, in Lake Superior, wherever. Those are Badranung stories, our Lake Superior and Anishinaabe stories, and stories of how we relate on the land. And she has that kind of old story. We ain't going to read that in the book. Right? That's stuff that she learned, growing up from the people on the water, on the land, with their fishery.
You also mentioned that some of the people have just learned it. Was she able to show you how to do something with the spirits, your community?
Like, I'm not sure what you mean.
About, for example, did she show your community how to feed the water spirits?
Oh yeah. Yeah, so when we went to another harbor, another bay, and there was a couple hundred of us. And again, the elder said, we can't just go in. We can't just go on the land without putting our sema down and explaining what we're doing. And if any harm comes to any animals or any shrubs or any flora, any plants, that we need to apologize. We're not intentionally doing that, but we're doing our work, and how we have to apologize for the interference. So we'd have to put our sema down, and we'd have to smoke our pipes. We'd have to have ceremony before we went in. And we had to have a feast. So she said, we're going to have this feast, and today we're going to feed Mijo Bajon. We're going to feed that spirit of Lake Superior. So a couple hundred of us, we all smoked our pipes, and we had a lot of elders there. And she told the women, and she told all of us how to do the feast, how to food ready, and what we had to do, and how we had to do that, how it had to be cooked and stuff. And then we went down to the water. She says, come on, everybody, come on down to the water. And we're going to go down to the water. And she went right to the edge of the water, and she started to, we had to bring that plate. We had to bring a plate with the food down to the water, and she held that plate. She said her prayer, and then she leaned over and she brushed that plate off into Lake Superior. And where we were was in this bay, maybe a kilometer across, and it was kind of like a gravelly beach, gravel like that size, and you could see just on the beach there, and then maybe about 30 feet away you could see where there was a drop off. There was a gradual slope on the beach under the water, maybe 20-30 feet, and gradually, and then it went on a drop. So she put this plate of food in the water for Mijo Bojo, and then never thought anything of it. And then you could see it was really calm day. The lake was calm, and you could see about 50 feet away. You could see this little ripple in the lake, a little bit of like a little wave coming in. This little wave started to make its way in, and gradually got closer and closer, and it kind of broke water a little bit. And then when it got to the shore, it went under the water, and you could see that food just being dragged down in water, and dragged down and the 20 or 30 feet, and dragged down and went over the edge. The food went over the edge. And she said, see, that's what we got to do. That's Mijo Bojo. We got to feed that spirit. What a powerful moment.
I also want to hear a little from Elder Stevens of Batchewana. So for her, we will demonstrate how the protocol introduced her very differently than any other case before. We had her sit beside the lawyer and the interpreter, and you'll see the interpreter even has her hand on the shoulder of the elder. There's just so much respect that was given and afforded Elder Stevens. Then you will hear some of her testimony about what was required by the augmentation clause and the need for there to be more than $4 as a treaty obligation. And we will show you a little ending about how she talked and how respected, and I mean, there was even humor. People were laughing in the courtroom, like this just doesn't happen in normal court. I recall that one of the court reporters came up to me after the hearing in Garden River and said that they'd never seen anything like that in their 20 years as a court reporter. That respect and the different way that we treated the witnesses and the elder witnesses. She said in all of her years, it was a real honor to see that a trial could be conducted in this way. So have a look at Elder Stevens.
Do you affirm that you understand the Anishinaabe language and the English language, that you shall accurately interpret the affirmation to the witness and all questions put to the witness and her answers thereto, and all such matters and things as shall be required of you to the best of your skill and understanding?
Yes.
Thank you.
Do you remember when your dad was chief, him talking to you about the Robinson-Huron Treaty of 1850 and the governments?
Yes. He said, let's give us our inherent right to I forget what they call that.
Did your dad?
My dad. Yeah, my dad. That's what he said. That we should get our inherent right of 1850.
Did he talk to you about the annuities? The money that they got for the 1850 treaty? Did he talk to you about that?
What's that?
The Jonia?
Yeah? Oh, I don't know. I didn't. That's all he always said. He always said that, you know, it's about time they should be giving us our rights, 1850. That's a long time for us to be used, because it was just treaty time. What it wouldn't do with $4. We can't buy nothing with $4. And so they tried, him and Pete, but the government wouldn't listen to them.
And how, did he write letters to the government about that $4 not being enough?
Yeah.
Did you see him writing letters? Can you share with the court whether you saw your dad writing letters?
No, no. But my dad always turned to the treaty book. All the time. It says in the treaty book, he says, that we don't have to go buy a license and hunt, trap. But even then, my dad had to buy a license after they changed that at Sault Ste. Marie. They put it at Sault Ste. Marie. After that, my dad had to buy a license. And they said, this year place, that old name that we used to use, it's gone. Now today, it's Sault Ste. Marie. And you have, unless you want to hunt, trap, you have to buy a license. And that treaty book there, it's not any more good, they told him. It's no good. Well, the Queen's picture is on that don't matter, he said. So that's when my dad had to buy a license then. When it was Sault Ste. Marie, not Boating. Because that was the Indian name that they used, the Indians, Boating. From the 18th century.
Did your dad, when he was chief, complain that the $4 was not enough to the government?
No.
Did you see him complaining to the government that the $4 was not enough?
Pardon?
At Treaty Day?
The treaty, yeah, that's what he talked about all the time. He always brought out the treaty book. He said, that's what the Queen gave us, he says, was the treaty book. Now it's about time to get rid of the Indian Act. And that judge says never. So I don't know how we're going to make out. We'll try to get rid of the Indian Act, or even change that $4. I don't know how we're going to make out, unless one thing that I can think of. Stop those trains. Stop those trains. I see a train going by, you know, freight. There, I counted 9 cars, all loaded up with logs. So every day like that, they're taking away our wood. So so if they they can stop the trains, put a teepee there, because that teepee is spirit. There's a spirit in that, because it came from the wood. You know, all the wood, the trees, it's all spirit. The Indians always believed that. My dad believed in it. And today, I believe in it. You're right.
We're all done, Irene.
All done.
You were done.
Oh, yeah. See, me regrets, I say that 100 times, me regrets. Yeah. Yeah. Every one of you, me regrets for having me here. I was very glad to come here and be with you. Try and help. I'm trying. Dear, I'm 95 years old. I'm still going.
Elder Irene Stevens, let me add my thanks to you from the court. Make which to you, Elder Stevens, I echo all of what you have heard today. We are all very privileged to have you come to this hearing and to speak to us. Miigwech.
Miigwech.
Okay.
Thank you.
We're done. We can walk you over. So I must say, to this day, Elder Stevens continues to guide me in the work that we do, and everyone. And I think you've heard from Chief Sayers talking about how inspirational she has been to all of us. We could not do this case without the Anishinaabe perspective. You will hear from chiefs, elders in stage 3 of the trial as well. I remember when we first started this case, and we started first in ceremony. We have followed Anishinaabe protocols from day one, and I remember the late Joe Arve telling us that he thought that this case could be won without the Anishinaabe perspective, that we could just win it based on the common law principles. But our elders, told us right from the get-go, you cannot talk about this treaty without the Anishinaabe perspective. It has to be done. Don't be afraid. Our people are ready. And so, for my part, it is an honor and a privilege to work with the chiefs, knowledge keepers, elders, experts, and communities in bringing that perspective to the Annuities case and to the court and throughout every aspect of this case. We even had some of our ceremonies recognized at the Court of Appeal, which was for the first time. Chief Justice Strathy and Justice Lowers were very open to make sure that our protocols were respected. In practicing our ceremonies, from day one, the Crown officials and the court experienced firsthand that we still very much live our customs, traditions, and practices, our Anishinaabe laws. Elder Stevens is in the spirit world now. She left us on July 2nd, 2022, at 99 years of age. But if you listen to her testimony, she just talked about how she just always wanted to help. But she's still one of our helpers now in the spirit world. I know I think about her always. I want to end my presentation today on the Anishinaabe perspective and how vital it is to interpreting any treaty, I want to end with a snippet from my closing submissions at the trial about the importance of the Anishinaabe perspective. You will hear someone coughing all throughout. You probably heard it when Chief Dean Sayers was introducing her, and you will hear someone coughing throughout my closing submissions. And I feel like it was Elder Stevens encouraging and reminding me to keep going in a good way. I remember the last thing she said to me, the last time I was able to talk to her, and you know, she was having to leave the building, and she turned around, you know, she was always so comedic, and she said, "I'll see you later." And I really believe that to be true. I will see her in the spirit world one day, and I'm really happy that I got to share this time with you today in Treaty Week. And I look forward to working with you at the Supreme Court of Canada, the trial. Hopefully we settle this case someday, and that Ontario really does honor Treaty Week by now recognizing and honoring our treaty, not by ignoring our perspective, the Anishinaabe perspective. So thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy this little piece from the trial. And again, I encourage you, all of this is archived. If you have time to watch it, it's your evidence, it's your story. Miigwech, Bamapi.
I will never be as great as Dr. Stark in some of the other stories, and that's why I'm going to read. I'm going to try and tell this story, but it resonates with me, and it's the treaty with the Beaver Nation. So in this story, this is about our treaty with the Beaver Nation and this young girl, this young Anishinaabe who goes out to fast, which we still do. So she's actually engaged in her puberty rite ceremony in that fasting. In the longer version of this story, they talk about her charcoal on her forehead, and she's gone out fasting to seek her purpose in life, and they really explain the fast. And while she's out there, she's approached by this man. And in the words of Dr. Stark, they hit it off. And you know, then he asked her to marry him. They live, and then she lives with him. Things are moving quickly in this story for this purpose, I admit. And she admits that it was a quick romance, if you will. They marry and they're living together, and they come to have a number of children together. And she's living a very comfortable life, a very happy life. And you know, she talks about being really well off, that they have many gifts and goods. And they're without want or desire that they may have so many things. And she notices that her husband and children will often leave. They'll come back with many gifts. And they're always very happy. So she asks them one day, "Where do you go? And why do you leave me at home?" And her husband says, "We go to visit with the Anishinaabe. We love visiting with the Anishinaabe. They always show us such love and kindness and give us these gifts." And she says, "Well, I want to go visit the Anishinaabe too, with you." He says, no, you should stay here." And they leave it at that. And her husband and the children go off to visit the Anishinaabe. And one day she's cleaning up around the house, and she looks around and realizes that she's in a beaver lodge. And she's bewildered and wondering, how is it that I'm in a beaver lodge? What's happening? So her husband and children return, and she confronts him with this new realization that she's in a beaver lodge. And now I think that Elder Irene Stevens has joined us. I know that she would say if she was in the beaver lodge, she would take that beaver and skin it. She could probably skin one today.
I think there's a long list.
So her husband and children return, and she confronts him with this new realization that she's in a beaver lodge. And she realizes that she has married a beaver. But again, he's saying to her, he knows he's getting up there in age, and in the time he will pass on to the spirit world. And so he says to her, "You know, when our time together is complete, I want you to go back to your people and tell them about how much we love the Anishinaabe. and respect the Anishinaabe, and how much we enjoy visiting with them. So he does pass on to the spirit world, and she does return to her people, and she tells them all about her time living with the beavers. And she says to people, you know, beware. Like, you must show respect and love to the beaver, for those who respect the beaver will find great success in trapping. But if you don't have respect for the beaver, you won't have success. So if we look to this story, and this is in the words of Dr. Stark, and her interpreting this story, it's about the relationships. And one of the relationships is the young girl with the beaver nation. We can see that this is really a treaty between the Anishinaabe and the beaver, where in Anishinaabe, there's these very core principles for the Anishinaabe that are driving the relationship. The first principle is respect. So, and respect here is also embodied in the notion of love. That we must respect and love for one another, to act in kindness. And again, with great reverence and respect for one another. And we see this with the women kind of giving the instruction to the Anishinaabe, when she returns, that they must be respectful when they engage in trapping practices. And when they talk about the beaver, they must do so with great respect. Then we also see the sacred principle that's really important in this story, which is the principle of responsibility that we sometimes will talk about through a language of reciprocity. So within, somebody give Arthur Stevens a nap. So within that story, you know, she talks about all this comfort that they're living in, and every time her husband and children return from the Anishinaabe, they bring back gifts. And so we see that principle of responsibility to one another being enacted in this story, because it's through that offering of sama, that tobacco, that Anishinaabe make when they first go out to trap a beaver or any animal or any bee. And they petition that beaver to come visit them. That they're asking for the best beaver to give their life, or not the best beaver, that beaver to give their life for the Anishinaabe, to then also be able to live in the same kinds of comfort and to thrive, much as we see the beaver nation thriving in this story. And a protocol that Anishinaabe have when trapping beavers, and it's a little different for every animal. But with beavers, we're told, they return the bones of the beaver back to the water after we've used the other parts of the beaver in a respectful way. And so the act of returning bones back to the water, we see the story through the ways in which the father and children continue to return after they visit the Anishinaabe. And this is the third principle of renewal, where this isn't a one-time thing. It's not a one-time agreement. It's a relationship between the beaver and the Anishinaabe that's ongoing, living relationship, in which every time Anishinaabe are trapping, they have to offer their sama, that tobacco, again and again. And this is an ongoing process. But also that treaty it remains intact and ongoing by the return of those bones back in the water. So the Anishinaabe and the beaver both continue to enjoy kind of a mutual benefit from their relationship through this enactment of their ongoing relationship. So again, this treaty is rooted in these principles of respect. Respect for one another, showing love and kindness to one another. It's driven by a notion or principle of responsibility to one another, and it's understood as ongoing and is always in need of renewal. So this is what enables the beavers to be born again and again and regenerated. So what we say is that from these stories that Dr. Stark showed, and all of the stories were interrelated, and they're a source of our law. Like Dr. John Boyle says, you have to know how all of the stories relate to one another. Elder Kelly talked about the different ways of learning and the particular importance of Hansapani, as did Elder Rita Corbier. They're sacred stories, and storytelling can be very sacred. Dr. Stark explained that stories are an embodiment of how we have lived with creation since our very existence, including living on, and the importance of living on Anishinaabe and King. She explained the stories as a source of law, but also embedded with them as a legal philosophy or jurisprudence of Anishinaabe law and its interconnection with our relationship with creation. What this specific story teaches us is Robinson-Huron treaties are intended to strengthen relationships and kinships. The notion of trust embedded in this story, Beavers are trusting the Anishinaabe to carry out their obligations and responsibilities that enables their regeneration. So we live in a deeply interconnected world here in Canada, and we must rely on one another to be able to thrive. Again, to summarize the 3 core principles driving this treaty relationship: respect, responsibility, and renewal. The importance of our mutual responsibilities, the necessity of upholding and implementing these fundamental principles through specific practices and protocols. For example, returning boats to the water. When I talk about the Treaty Council and interpreting the treaty through Anishinaabe law and applying Anishinaabe law.
We're good? We're back online? Okay, so Ani, Chimigwech, Diane, for that amazing video. Before we get to the end of our event today, we mentioned earlier that we had Gimon Uchtai from Atikmikshing with Marcus Schwabi at CBC North, Morning North this morning. So we have a quick snippet that we're going to play for you guys, and then we encourage you to stay online, and we have some announcements for the rest of our events this week. So I'll pass it to Barrett to play the online stream.
If you've ever been to a public event in the last several years, near the beginning you'll hear a land acknowledgement, how the land where the event is taking place is on the traditional grounds of local First Nations. In the Sudbury area, that includes the territory of the Atikmikshing, Anishinaabeg, and Wanapatei First Nations. Canadians settled this land thanks to treaties that were signed with First Nations. I guess they were Europeans, not really Canadians at that point. In 1850, the Robinson-Huron Treaty was signed with the 21 First Nations living along the eastern and northern shores of Lake Huron from Penetanguishene to Sault Ste. Marie and Batchewana Bay. And one of the calls to action from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission was to establish a treaty week to raise awareness about treaty relationships. In studio, we have Craig Nuchtai, Chief of Atikmikshing Anishinaabeg, along with Mike Restool, Chair of the Robinson-Huron Treaty Litigation Fund. Good morning to you both.
Good morning. Good morning, Marcus.
So, Mike, what is in the Robinson-Huron Treaty of 1850? What does it say?
The Robinson-Huron Treaty, signed with the Crown in 1850, deals with the sharing of the land. And in return for sharing of the land, the chiefs at the time said that if you use the land and you make revenue from the land, we ought to get a share of that revenue for our own sustenance.
And it lays out an amount even.
That's right. It lays out an amount, an annual amount that is paid to the chiefs and their tribes each year. And that's presumably what the case is going to zero in on.
Right, the lawsuit.
Right.
Chief Nuchtai, how much do you get from treaty?
Well, I get $4 a year, and so do the rest of our band members. And that hasn't changed for over 100 years.
But the federal government does support First Nations financially in other ways.
Not really. I mean, if you call, severe underfunding, basically it's poverty management. That's what it is.
But housing, they've got housing programs. There are a series of programs that are provided for First Nations. It's not as if you only get $4 per person a year.
That's right. So a lot of the revenue that's generated doesn't come back to us. So, there's billions and billions of dollars that are generated in this particular area, but
because of mining and
forestry, energy, but we don't see a fair share of that. In the Robinson Huron Treaty area, we definitely don't see a fair share of those revenues as well.
And Mike, you went to court over this a few years ago.
Yes.
And where does that stand?
Currently, we have stage 3 of the trial. The trial was broken into 3 stages by the presiding judge in Superior Court, and so now we're at the 3rd stage, which is to be held in January, starting off here in Sudbury. And then coming up in the fall will be an appeal by Ontario to the Supreme Court of Canada to wash away the treaty, basically the way it's been outlined by the Superior Court.
Because there is a clause in the treaty that says the amount that First Nations receive should be reviewed from time to time. Has that happened?
It happened once during all of the years, over a century of dealings. It happened once in 1875 when the beneficiaries of the treaty got an increase from about $1.60 to $4 per year.
So they haven't. Everybody's talking about inflation these days. They haven't taken that into consideration. Even when we're talking about the education workers, right? Like in Ontario, they haven't seen an increase in the last few years.
That's right. And Marcus, the judge in Superior Court stated that it was not the $4 per year that is the annuity. The annuity is the 600 pounds of provincial crown currency that is identified in the treaty document that is to be increased each year. So
is there an amount, a set figure that you're hoping that First Nations receive here?
What we would have to do is we would have to review the revenue that's been gained in the territory and the expenses that have occurred as a result of developing that revenue. So those are the 2 things that the court stated should be taken into consideration to determine how much the annuity should be.
So, Chief Newt-Shtye, is it about the money for you?
No, it's about really upholding the treaty and the spirit of the treaty. Where we share in not just the benefits of the land, but in decision making. How we're supported, how we work together, and you mentioned the province giving us supports, right? Well, I think there's a better way of managing or supporting First Nations. I think we're not to be wards of the state anymore. Atikameksheng is undergoing our own sovereignty exercise where we have our own declarations, our own proclamations, we have our own constitution. And to me, that's what the treaty is about. It is really recognizing that we are 2 nations. We have a symbiotic relationship. So we have to build on that part.
And what's that relationship like right now, would you say? I'm sure it's better in the last few years than it was 10, 20 years ago.
And it comes and goes with whatever government's in play in the province. And that shouldn't be the case. There should be real fundamental legislation that requires whichever party's in power to continue working on key initiatives. So that's what this week is about, is to raise awareness, not just to the people in power, but to everyday citizens to understand that they too have a part to play in all of this as well.
Mike, you've been working on this for years now. How do you feel about the treaty?
It's actually a part of my whole psyche, Marcus.
You wake up thinking about it?
Absolutely. I have been living this for almost 30 years now, and it's a task that I've agreed to myself to do, and to hopefully to get it done in my lifetime. And it's a journey. It certainly is a journey. You know, we worked with a lot of chiefs, a lot of councils to get this moving. We've gone through number of premiers and prime ministers, and
it's not over yet.
And it's not over yet.
Chief Nuchtai, tell me about some of the events you've got coming up this week to celebrate Treaty Week.
Well, right now there's a sunrise ceremony going on in Atikmeksheng at our teaching lodge, and then tomorrow we have some more events with an RHTAC update, and so these are some online virtual events, but we also have some future discussions with our future leaders on treaty going on in the schools at St. Ben's and St. Charles. So I'm taking part of that along with Gama Adam Pawis and Gama Angus Toulouse. And
Did you find the high school students, do their eyes glaze over, or do they get it?
You know, it's like any other high school, right? I don't know how your high school days were, but yeah, you have a few that kind of, you know, wish they could be somewhere else. But for the most part, I just did a presentation last week, and we had a lot of questions about the relationship and why things are the way they are, and you know, what can they do better, and how you know, really understanding, you know, that relationship.
Well, what do you want people to think about this week during Treaty Week?
I just want people to think that you know, the relationship, it's like any other. It's like a marriage, right? You really have to work on it. You have to be open-minded. You have to listen. You have to do your own homework too. You have to understand. And I would suggest, you know, looking at our RHW website, you know, they have so much information there on the Robinson Huron Treaty, what the expectations were. So I think, you know, that's what I'm hoping.
Mike, your thoughts?
There are 4 R's to treaty relationship in terms of Robinson Huron Treaty, and those are responsibility, respect, reciprocity, and renewal. Those principles are describing the relationship between the parties that existed in 1850 when the Crown said, we want to use the land. And so today, it's no less important today to our people than it was in 1850. And it's important for people to understand that the treaty will not end. It will continue so long as both peoples are living in this land.
I appreciate you both coming in this morning. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Marcus.
Thank you, Marcus.
That is Mike Ristool, chair of the Robinson Huron Treaty Litigation Fund. And if you want more information, just search out the Robinson Huron Treaty. And Craig Nuchtai, who is chief of the Atikmeksheng Anishinaabe. The Morning North Mystery.
Okay, Ani. So miigwech Gima Nuchtai and Mike for, you know, filling in our spot for us at CBC this morning, and Chimigwech to Marcus Schwabe for sharing some information about our Treaty Week. So we do have a couple announcements before we wrap up for the day. I want to say Chimigwech to Diane for sharing her video. I know many of you guys may have some questions. So if you do have some questions, I encourage you to attend tomorrow, and we're also going to be having an update from our litigation team. So I believe that's happening tomorrow at 9 a.m. So that'll be via Zoom, and that's with Daniel McCoy. So he'll be there to take any questions that you may have. So tomorrow we'll be streaming on Zoom if you can attend there, but we also have an in-person event at the Caruso Hall at the lower hall. So I encourage you guys to come on out. I'm just going to do a quick recap of our agenda for the week before we sign off. So most of our events are streamed online. So if you can't attend in person, feel free to watch online. However, our play De Waawiindamaagewin that Shkogmakwe is hosting will not be streamed. So we encourage you to come on down to Nisquakamok and come watch it in person. You have the option of 2 different viewings, 11 a.m. and 7 p.m. So it's an amazing production. You won't want to miss it. You can also join us in person tomorrow at the Crusoe Club, or Thursday morning at Place des Arts, or in the afternoon at Tom Davies Square here right downtown Sudbury in the council chambers. Tomorrow we have a jam-packed event. It's our Treaty Panels Day. So we have a youth panel. We're going to talk about their inherent rights, and that's facilitated by Quinn Mwasigi. We also have Kyle George from Nipissing. We have Robert Sinaway from Sagamuk and Anishinaabeg. We have Caleb Mwasigi from Ganabajing, Serpent River. And we also have Kiera and Kaylee Jenneru from Shuswagwaning. So they'll be sharing their perspectives. I'm very excited for that. We're also having an Ogimakwe panel. So we'll hear from our leader, our women leaders, and that'll be facilitated by Valerie Riche. So very much looking forward to that as well. And we're also going to hear from our TEK elders. That'll be facilitated by Nelson Toulouse. So a lot of great speakers tomorrow, a lot of panels, a lot of great information that you're not going to want to miss. As I mentioned, we're also going to have an update from our Robinson Huron Treaty Litigation Fund team on our annuities litigation. And then Wednesday, as Gimon Michitai mentioned, we are having treaty talks with tomorrow's leaders. So this is our education day where our Gimas will be in our high schools taking questions from primary students as well as secondary students. So if you're a teacher, educator, student, feel free to log in that day. Send us any questions you may have that you want to ask our Gimas. You can email those questions in and we'll do our best to get them to our leaders. And then Thursday is our Treaty Teachings Day. So we're going to start our Treaty Teachings Day with our Debwaywen play at 11 a.m. right downtown here in Sudbury at Place des Arts, so just about a block away here from our office. You can register for that event on Eventbrite. It is free, that showing. So we encourage you guys all to come out. Because of the content of the play, it is recommended for people ages 13 and up. So maybe not too appropriate for some of the younger grades, but if you're in a classroom or if you're students, feel free to come on down. The doors are going to open at 10:30. We're hoping to have everybody seated in the auditorium at 10:45 so we can start right at 11 a.m. Once the play is over, we're going to head over to council chambers just right downtown at Sudbury City Hall for some teachings. So some of those teachings will have Nokomis Martina, we're gonna have Mike Biso, we're gonna have Mary Elliott, as well as Leroy Bennett. So come on out, they're gonna have treaty teachings throughout the afternoon, and then they're gonna close up with panel as well. So just a couple of reminders on how to register. Our events will be broadcasted online via Zoom all week, with the exception of Thursday morning's presentation of the play. The easiest way to register for all of our events is by visiting our Treaty Week page, which is waawiindamaagewin.com/Treaty Week 2022. And I believe they'll put that in the chat for us. This page is on our homepage, but it can also be accessed via Facebook. So the registration for the online events are all being registered through Zoom, and any in-person events are through Eventbrite. So we're encouraging everybody to register via Eventbrite, just so we know how many people are coming, so we can make sure we have enough food for you guys. But if you haven't had a chance to register and you want to come, feel free to show up in person. And before we sign off, I just wanted to acknowledge and say Chimigwech to Ogimakwe Manchwabi, who is right now down in Toronto. And she is repatriating the 1836 Bond Head pipe and bringing it back home to its permanent location at OCF. So if you guys remember in the summer, they did welcome the treaty pipe back home. There is an article of it in our magazine. So honored and happy to have this back home in our territory. And I believe Ogimakwe Manchwabi will also be joining us at the Ogimakwe panel tomorrow. So hopefully she'll have some updates to share with us about the pipe. And then I also wanted to say Chimigwech to our Robinson Huron Waawiindamaagewin team and our litigation fund team who have been helping us put on this event. So much work going on behind the scenes. So I want to say Chimigwech to Barrett, Sam, Leroy, Matt, our camera guy here, and especially Jolene, who's been managing and coordinating all of our events and the main contact and setting up all of the logistics for an event like this. And of course, say Chimigwech as well to Chicago Health Center for working with us and for hosting their amazing play. I haven't had a chance to see it yet, so I'm really looking forward to Thursday morning. On that note, I just want to remind everybody that we're starting back up tomorrow at 8:45. So you can join us here on Zoom or in person at the lower hall at the Crusoe Club. And on that note, I'll say Ba Ma Peak Wadman. I'll see you all tomorrow.